Good day. Still a really bright day today. I need to find a different place than filming here, so I film that way. Because even though it's a muted day, it's still right in your eyes. Anyway, never mind. At the allotment today, and I'm going to be setting up my Hotbin Composter. Now, some of you who've been watching us for a while may know that I set up our Hotbin Composter last year and didn't have a huge amount of success with it. But that's because I didn't do it properly. And with these things, you need to do them properly. Now, what actually is a Hotbin composter? Well, ours is one called Hotbin. It is a Hotbin composter. And they're about 180 to 225 pounds, but we got ours on free cycle, or trash nothing as I think it's now called, last year. And you really need to get the mixes of dry and wet and greens and browns correct in it to make sure it works really well. What the Hotbin composter does is it composts at a really high heat, much higher than your pallet bin composter or an external composter that you may have on your allotment at the moment. Typically sort of above 40 degrees. To get rid of really pernicious weeds and weed seeds, I think it needs to be 60 or 70 degrees Celsius and upwards. And even though that may sound really bizarre and quite hot, it does actually happen. Even though we didn't get our mix right last year, the bin for quite a lot of its time was certainly above 40 degrees, and throughout the hot summer was certainly above 75 degrees centigrade. So what we ended up with was a compost that had an awful lot of the pernicious weeds and seeds killed effectively because of the composting at high heat. You may have seen me mention our broad beans, which are over there. That compost that we used there was from our normal pallet bin composter, so our cold composter, and it's full of weeds, including poppies, which is fantastic. So there's lots of poppy seeds. However, our early potato bed, which I've just noticed now the early potatoes are just coming through, that was from our Hotbin composter. So I will show you the difference in the number of weeds, because it really is quite distinct. Now, fair enough, I should have got on top of the broad bean bed earlier. And what I normally do is that's a new edge bed from which we made up in about November of last year. I normally put 2 layers of cardboard down, then the edge bed frame on top, then fill with compost. Then I normally put another layer of cardboard on top of that compost and let that rot down over the winter. This year I didn't do that. I didn't put that top layer of compost on top, and therefore the weeds really got away at the beginning of the year. I could have kept on top of it, but you know what? There's so many poppies in there now, which are going to be glorious once they flower, and we're going to have broad beans from it, so I'm fine. Let me now show you the Hotbin composter. It's like a Dalek, but it's square and it's insulated. There's, I think, 1.5 to 2.5 inches of insulation material, which then means that the compost inside, when it starts heating up, that heat is retained, where in a pallet composter it would go to the environment. With these heated Hotbin composters, or insulated rather, Hotbin composters, that heat is maintained within the hot compost bin, and that just builds up heat and builds up heat. Will it auto combust at some point? I don't know. Time will tell. I don't think any have so far. Right, I'm going to show you the Hotbin now and what we've done, and I'm also going to show you what we're going to be putting into it to hopefully get the mix of greens and browns right this year, so that we don't end up with something that is on the moister side, on the more moist side of compost. We want something which is soft and pliable and moist rather than wet. And I think last year it was a bit too wet. This is a pile of weeds we cut this morning. You can see there's some alkanet there, more alkanet. There's that sticky stuff which I never know what it is. There's grass, and there's also just bits and pieces of twigs and things in there. And this is what we want to turn into a decent compost. Now, obviously, if we just let this pile, it's about a foot high here, maybe. If we just let this rot down, it would rot down over time. But what the hot bin does is it speeds up the decomposition of all of this. Now I'm going to show you what we're going to add to speed up that process. So this is what we're using to add to all that green pernicious weeds. Here we have bog standard home compost from our peely bin. So there's carrot tops, onions, potato peelings, whole load of peelings in there. This is wood chip, shredded paper, chicken manure pellets. These are tea bags, as you can see. What I do is I squeeze all the water out of the tea bags and then put them in here and just let them dry on the counter, because I prefer splitting the bags open with my fingers when I put them into the compost. Otherwise, you can come back 3 or 4 months later and find a whole non-composted tea bag. This is what is that? Comfrey leaf. We've got shredded cardboard or torn up cardboard, and then on the back here we have some nettles. If I move you up, if I just twist you around, move you up, this is our Hotbin composter. At the bottom here is the door that you take off to get the compost out. Right at the bottom, this is where liquid comes out, any excess liquid comes out, and inside here there is a floor made of this same insulated material that has got holes in it to let liquid out. Moving back up, this is actually, I think you have seen this. This is our composting area. This is our pallet bin composter. So this is the cool compost. It gets warm, but it doesn't get hot. Here is our hot bin composter. And then at the back here is a dead hedge where we put cuttings, brambly cuttings and twigs and things like that as a dead hedge, because this is where the fox goes along the back. This area at the back is actually reserved as a nature area. So coming back here is the lid. You can see it's got air holes in it. This is the plate that I was talking about. As you can see, what's that? That's about 2 inches, 1 3/4, 2 inches, I think. So this is the insulating material all the way around. That keeps everything hot. And then on the top here, that closes. And then on the top here is a vent to open and close. And that needs to be open a couple of millimeters to start with. And then here is a temperature gauge. Can you see that? There, that's temperature gauge, which, as you can see at the moment, says it's 20 degrees, which is effectively a little higher than the ambient temperature. So now we are going to start filling this up, and we're going to use some of these at the side to put into the bottom here. there we have it, job done. I've lasagnaed the layers and given it a little jiggle at the end, as you can see, or as you saw from that rather. And I am hoping that by starting off this way and then making sure that we add enough cardboard and shredded paper and also the semi-composted bark, that will keep the air flowing through and not allow everything we put into it to get too wet, because that is the danger with hotbin composting. If you imagine when you are composting in a normal pallet bin like the one on the right of our hotbin composter, a lot of that liquid is going down into the soil underneath. So when it does decompose down it, or compost down, it goes into it runs through and goes into the soil beneath, especially if there's enough air in it. And of course, if you're turning it regularly and putting the right levels of greens and browns and things into your pallet composter, then there should be enough air in it for the water to go right through. Sometimes, of course, in really dry weather, you need to water a pallet bin or outside compost bin, especially if you have one which is covered. Ours is now semi-covered with that what is it? It's actually for cement, mixing cement in a building site, which next door had and they were going to throw away. So I thought that'll do to put on top of the compost to keep most of the rainwater off, and then I can top up with water when I want. The hotbin composter, you do not put water into it. You do not put liquids into it. So yeah, all of that has been lasagna layered and given a little jiggle, and we'll see what the temperature is over the coming weeks. And I'll keep a note on Planet Vegetarian of exactly how the temperature is going, and we'll update in the videos that we do. I think that's it for today. Yes, it's time to go home. It's just gone 5 o'clock. Actually, there are a few things that I want to do. As ever, there are a few things I want to do. What I am going to leave you with, though, is a shot of an iris, and I now see that we have a white iris coming. We got some iris on Freegal, Free Cycle, Trash Nothing as well. I'm going to show you those now. Thank you very much for watching. Please do subscribe and hit the bell button to go to get notifications. Bye. Plane going over now.